CNN State of the Union had Sebastian Gorka, the counterterrorism director for Donald Trump, on to discuss the mass shooting that occurred in Minnesota this week. And I must commend Brianna Keilar for actually pushing back on this crook that's out there, liar that's out there representing the Trump administration's viewpoint of what happened with the mass shooting. Take a listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
We have to put this incident into the broader context of what we've witnessed in just the last few years. More than half a dozen attacks of a similar variety involving individuals who are confused about their gender, to put it mildly. And then, as you mentioned at the top of your monologue, we have the videos, we have the statements from the dead shooter that were clearly anti-Christian, just as with the transgender attack on the Nashville Christian school in which more children were killed. There is an ideological connection to multiple of these attacks where innocent children, especially Christians and Catholics, are targeted, and that is very, very disturbing.
Let me ask you about this. 96% of attackers when you're looking at the U.S. Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center, looking at 172 mass attacks in the U.S. between 2016 and 2020, 96% were non-trans men. So I know you're focusing on this shooter being trans. The shooter was trans, and that is certainly of note. But are you missing the bigger picture here when you zero in on that instead of more broadly these school shooters as an epidemic, and you perhaps miss the through line that connects them all?
Well, no, because your facts obfuscate two things. You are using data based upon the predominant gun violence, which is gang-on-gang violence with zero ideological content. If you remove all of that, the gang violence on the streets of Chicago, LA, Detroit, then you come down to a much smaller data set. So it's like those who say, gun violence in America causes so many deaths, and then fail to note that the majority of the stats they are using refer to also suicides by gun, which of course is not what we are talking about here today. So let's concentrate on mass shootings at schools, specifically Christian or Catholic schools. Then the data set is wholly different. So don't conflate different data sets just to make a political point.
So let's narrow it down then, because by CNN's count, when you look at 32 school shootings since 2020, in which you have 4 or more people who have been killed. So these are the larger school shootings. Only 3 of 32 of those shootings were committed by transgender shooters.
Yeah, forgive me if I don't go with CNN stats, okay? CNN has proven itself to be wholly inaccurate in all kinds of things for the last 10 years, perpetrators of the Russia hoax, and that we didn't have an open border. So please forgive me if I don't take your stats for granted.
All right, it's simple math. 2 of 32
No, it's
shootings.
not. It's distortions. You are distorting the facts. Let me be clear. In just a couple of years, we have seen 7 mass shootings involving people of transgender nature or who are confused in their gender.
I see your list of 7. We can't stick with your facts because they're not accurate. In fact, in 2 of them, one of the ones you quoted,
let's talk about CNN's reputation for accuracy.
In one of the ones in which you posted, there was no evidence that he was trans.
Right.
In another, the individual was known within his family by male pronouns and used anti-LGBT
you have an agenda.
rhetoric. No, well, let me ask you this. You've made it clear, and this is not going to change. You think transgender people are the problem here. So what specifically do you think should be done?
No. When did I say that?
All right, you clearly think
when did I say that,
you
Brianna?
think it's a pattern? You've tweeted about it.
You just created live fake news. You just did it right in front of the small viewership you have. Mr. Gorka,
what do you think should be done here? You have zeroed in on the fact, on what you see is a problem, what you claim is a problem. What do you want to do about it?
What we should do is we should look at the early warning signals, the signs.
And what about all the non-trans school shooters?
What about all the same thing happens? We need to stop the violence before it occurs.
To that point, DHS cut funding to the Minnesota Department of Safety and the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office in July that is the kind of funding that's used to assess and manage mass violence threats like these. Was that a mistake, and should it be reinstated?
The same state of Minnesota that actually enacted gun-free zones that we know this killer actually favored in his manifesto, in his videos. He studied the Aurora shooters policy of looking for sites where individuals were not allowed to legally carry and protect themselves. So I'd start not with the policies coming out of a Department of Homeland Security that gets the threat, and I'd concentrate on those municipalities and those governors like Tim Walz who do what? Disarm honest citizens who could protect lives and save lives. Let's start there.
But these kinds of things happen everywhere. And you're talking about giving people off-ramps, which seems like it would require assessing threats. That's funding for assessing threats. Should that have another look at it so that it could be reinstated for assessing threats?
I don't believe that the federal government is the answer for mental health issues, okay?
What about for assessing threats? You're in the business of assessing threats.
Can I finish my answer, please? If we want to look for solutions, I believe in subsidiarity as a conservative. I believe problems should be solved at the point closest to the people affected by that problem. I would look to the town, to the city, to the county, or to the state, because they know the threats in their communities better. Don't wag your finger at DHS. DHS is doing an incredible job right now keeping America safe by getting rid of illegals from this country, more than 1.6 million, thanks to Governor Noem, thanks to Tom Homan, thanks to Stephen Miller. Don't look to D.C. to solve local problems.
So after he comes on and he goes ahead and said the big problem are the trans that are out there. They're the ones that are creating these mass shootings. She calmly gave him the statistics that out of in a recent segment, that out of the 90-something mass shooting that occur, there were just a few, 2, 3, I don't remember exactly how many, done by trans. Way less. It's mostly by men. Absolutely so. He said, well, you used the wrong data set. You're including things like people who did suicides and people who did gang banging, etc. Let's back up from that a while, okay? Because one of the reasons Donald Trump wants to spend a ton of money to throw the National Guard in blue cities is to bring down the crime. But again, if this crime is among the gang bangers and suicide, then why would you have these guards patrolling the entire streets since you actually know where this crime is localized at, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But anyhow, so he says the data set is wrong, and then he tries to narrow the data set to Catholic churches or Jewish churches. Might as well he had said, we're only talking about gun violence that trans have committed. And that's 100% then. If we limit the data set to trans committing, the trans that are committing trans killings, then it's 100. Again, it's ridiculous what he tried to portray. So then when he uses his data set, he goes ahead and he puts a tweet out, and she shot it down. She said, first of all, your tweet is lying. Some of the folks that you said are trans in your tweets, they're actually not trans. They're actually men. So even your tweet is lying. So they move on. And he goes ahead and he talks about when she asks, so what is the solution? Oh, well, local control. After the money has been cut, remember, he talks about it's a mental problem. He doesn't want to put the problem on too many guns out there. It's a mental problem, he says. So what did Doge do? Doge cut a lot of money out of the sheriff department's funding that would have solved would have helped find these problems, help the mental issues, etc. So she asks, is that a mistake that you guys have done that? Well, we believe in local control because these guys use it as a slush fund. And they said, well, again, So then are you saying that, you shouldn't have to worry about putting that money back? No, we believe in local control. Okay. If you believe in local control, why then, for a localized issue that you claim is caused by suicide, and that he doesn't see suicides and a gang-banging problem as something that is still related to having easy access to guns, it blows your mind, right? But I digress. He goes ahead and he says, well, that should be local control. But how comes they want not local control when they're federalizing the National Guard? They don't want local control when it is to control a woman's body. They won't want local control when it is about a woman leaving the state to have an abortion or to have something done. They don't want local control when it is about to decide how a city spends its money, whether they want to implement policies like UBI or anything like that. They want to control all of that. So it's local control when they have to spend money on issues or they make mistakes, but we want to have control whenever we want to tell you what to do because we want you to do it. But ultimately speaking, he comes back in a big circle to the same answer. And that is, wait a minute, we should have more guns. We should have armed all those people in the church so that they could have done something. Somebody shooting in from a window, and you are going to say, give more people guns so that they can go out there and shoot. The hypocrisy, the lack of morality, the evil within these people never ceases to amaze. Using trans as scapegoats to put them in danger now because of your policies that have killed people. Not only your gun policies, but your healthcare policies, your every type of policies you put out. Enrich the few and kills many.
All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict mainstream media that too often bend over backwards to support corporate or bought politicians' wants as opposed to the people's needs for real information to make their lives better. Independent media is the only solution to inform truthfully and factually. Why? Because our loyalties are to you, the ones who fund us with small dollar contributions and subscriptions. Please consider supporting our independent media platforms by subscribing to our Egberto Off the Record newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. It's an investment that pays incalculable dividends.